We're talking about the Kansas City Chiefs on the Our Lads Football Network, Our Lads Football YouTube channel. And we want to remind everybody, because we're getting closer and closer to the draft. This is last year's Our Lads 2024 draft guide. The 2025 one will be out and shipped, ready to ship on April 7th, 8th, right around there. So why not just order it now? No reason to wait. Link in the description. You can go and order this. It's got all of the scouting reports for 99% of the players that are drafted. And it will be drafted in this year's draft as well, of course. And so check it out in the link in the description area. So that's coming out real soon. You got the Our Lads Insider, which is also pretty cool because you're surfing through the depth chart pages, including the Chiefs. You don't like the ads? Well, the Insider eliminates the ads, and it has a few other really cool things. So check that out with the link in the description, which is exactly where you can find out our special guest and how to reach him as far as his podcast and his Twitter account, his articles on the Kansas City Chiefs, Mr. Charles Goldman. Charles, thanks for taking the time and a very busy time of the season to join us.
Hey, I love our conversation, so I'm happy to take the time out. Hey, just real quick, spoiler alert on the draft guide there. It's a really bad quarterback class. Thankfully, the Chiefs don't have to worry about that. But it's bad quarterback class.
Just imagine being. I can't imagine. I mean, I'm a Jet fan, but if you're like one of, let's say you're Cleveland and Tennessee. You're going, man, I mean, it couldn't have been last year. I mean, really? It's just all luck. And it's just amazing. Not that, of course, Chicago, I mean, Pace, he had the opportunity to take Jaden Daniels. He didn't do it. Whether you want to say it's pressure to take the guy that everybody says is the man, or just not being smart enough to go with the guy that our lad said from day one was the clear number one choice at quarterback. But they went with, and look, they're lucky because they get a second break that they're able to now hire a coach that everybody coveted. And maybe that's exactly what Caleb needs, and it should be. But you're right. The Chiefs do not have to worry about any of that after their third straight Super Bowl appearance and their second straight win. And now they come off a loss. So, of course, you're going to feel Chiefs are, hey, what are we going to do to get back there? They got the itch. So what do they got to do?
Well, I think, first, I think fans need to temper expectations a little bit. I think there's a sense like, how can we get better? I think right now it's more about how can we maintain, because they have a lot of pending free agents. They have a lot of holes and places that they need to really address. And, it's not going to get any easier because, this year you've got a pretty good 2021 draft class who's coming up who needs contract extensions. Next year you have probably the best draft in like recent history from maybe any GM, to be honest. In the 2022 draft class, you're going to have, a pair of first round draft picks, a guy like Isaiah Pacheco, Brian Cook, Leo Chenal, just like name after name of players who are going to need contract extensions. So not only are the Chiefs now thinking about, okay, how do we maintain this like level of play that we have and keep this up with all these free agents, but okay, how do we, replace some of these guys a couple years out, right? Because they're not going to be able to keep everyone. That's the way the cookie crumbles when you're a really great team, when you're paying a quarterback as much as you're paying the quarterback, when you're paying, a defensive tackle like Chris Jones, like there's going to be some guys that end up walking, some good players, and you got to be very fickle in how you go about replacing them and kind of winning in the margins.
All right. Well, let's start on offense to go over some of the free agents. First of all, this year that they have to address, which is coming up in just a couple of days. And they all of a sudden they come out and outside of Kansas City, maybe inside, people were taken back by the trade, the Joe Thuney trade. So we'll start there. And of course they tagged Trey Smith. So with those two linemen and those two moves, were either moves surprising?
Yeah, I think one kind of told you what was going to happen with the other, because the Chiefs weren't going to commit $20 million contracts, right, to two different interior offensive linemen. Like it's going to be one or the other. They're either going to let Trey Smith walk, and they made the decision not to do that by placing the franchise tag on him, right? And with the intention, this is different than DJ Humphries, or excuse me, L'Jarius Sneed, different player, different LJ, DJ LJ, anyhow, but different scenario than L'Jarius Sneed on the Tennessee Titans. They put the tag on him with the intention of trading him.
Yeah.
With Trey Smith, they have the tag on him with the intention of coming to a long-term contract extension.
Yep.
But I actually heard about the Joe Thuney trade on like the 23rd, the 24th. I heard that kind of floated as an option, and that was even before I believe that the Chiefs placed the tag on Trey Smith.
Okay.
And the way it was kind of presented to me was, obviously he's about to be 33 years old. You can extend him for a couple of years, or you can kind of get out from under that contract right now. You have a lot of guys who can actually compete for that left guard spot as potential options there.
Okay.
And really, it's going to allow them to have more flexibility with Trey Smith to get a long-term deal done. You get draft pick compensation. And, it hurts in the immediacy because Joe Thuney wasn't just your best left guard last season. He was also your best left tackle. So now it puts some pressure on the team to find the solution at left tackle, which they're hoping to do in free agency. But there's also multiple versions of this plan, right, that they have, and we'll see how it kind of plays out. But I don't think it was necessarily surprising to see that go down the way it did.
Okay.
I know Chiefs fans are going to be disappointed. I've said it myself. It's going to be a tough one to swallow, knowing how good Joe Thuney is, probably a future Hall of Famer. I mean, 4-time Super Bowl champion, multiple-time All-Pro, Pro Bowler, like very good. He's got the resume, really, really good player. It's going to be hard to replace him, even though the Chiefs do have options, right? But I will say that, in the long run, you have to make these types of decisions, right, to ensure that you maintain your level of competitiveness, your ability to have flexibility to make moves in free agency and in the NFL draft. So I think that was kind of thinking behind it, and hopefully it pays off for him.
Yeah, and then you just let off with next year, and then right there, I mean, you can't pay Thuney, Trey Smith, and then the biggest contract of all going to go to Creed Humphrey. You just can't do that. That's just it's just impossible, especially because it's really possible that they're going to have to spend money or try to on bringing in a tackle, like you said. Now they do have the second round kid from last year. Is there still a lot of hope that he can be the guy at left tackle, or have they seen enough of him to believe that, hey, I don't think they can trust him next year, so they need to bring in some more competition for sure?
Yeah, I don't think Kingsley is going to be in the mix for left tackle next year unless something goes very, very wrong.
Okay.
I think that, based on what we saw to end the season, I think they've really kind of shifted their mentality toward this guy is our future at the left guard position. I think he's the favorite right now to really replace Joe Thuney at left guard. You saw in the last game of the regular season against the Denver Broncos, he played the starting left guard position, had 25 pass blocking snaps there. Did pretty good. Didn't allow a whole lot of pressures. He showed more there in that single game at left guard in terms of promise than he did in multiple games at left tackle early on in the season. Mind you, it's a little different playing like a week 18, virtually a exhibition game, right, than it is against playing like against the Ravens, Bengals, whatever the grinder they put Kingsley through to start the 2024 NFL season. It's a different scenario, but the Broncos were still playing their starters. They were playing to get into the playoffs, so they had something to play for in that game, right?
Yeah.
So, and this is something that the Chiefs kind of floated out there. I would say like early December. I think Andy Heck spoke to the media and he mentioned that Kingsley had been taking some snaps at other positions besides left tackle in practice, and specifically at the guard position. And then we get to the playoffs, and suddenly Wanya Morris is made inactive throughout the playoffs, and Kingsley Sumatia takes his position. People are like, whoa, wait a second, that's interesting. Do they trust him at left tackle again? No, it was about the left guard position. They thought that he was someone who could give them versatility on the interior if they had an injury there. And then it was actually DJ Humphries who would have been kind of the swing tackle had they had an injury to Tooney or Jawan Taylor. So I think that right now it's Kingsley's job to lose.
Okay.
We've already seen that before, though, right? Like, it's not a guarantee.
No.
And I don't think the Chiefs are just going to give it to him either, especially when you see, they've got a trio of young guys as well from kind of this last draft class that are all interior offensive linemen in terms of their background. You got CJ Hansen. I would say he'd be a surprise. He very much so looked like a developmental prospect this year. He's someone that I think would be ready more around year 3. But you go to a guy like Hunter Norzad, he probably had the most impressive performance of anyone playing center in that Week 18 game against the Broncos. Didn't allow a single pressure. Was also like looking really good, kind of covering for some of the inadequacies that were happening around him, either at the tackle position, the guard position. I really liked what I saw from him, and I think that he could be someone to challenge for that starting left guard spot. And then the other one that you have on there, McCade Matower, like he's kind of the dark horse, as I described him in an article today, because no one really even realizes that he's still on the team. But this guy who got hurt, a knee injury, MCL injury, I think he tore his MCL during training camp. Actually, it's the first preseason game. And he ended up on injured reserve. And usually a guy like that ends up on injured reserve. They get waived with an injury waiver, but he actually stuck around all season. So that's usually a telltale sign that the team likes the guy and they want to give them another chance once they're healthy. So hopefully, he can show out a little bit. He was actually like the starting left guard on the second team offensive line in that first preseason game. So they clearly have some in terms of his ability. And, he could be someone who quietly challenges for an opportunity there.
Okay. So bottom line is the interior is not a position that the Chiefs are going to look at in the draft. They've got enough young guys. So it's just a matter of what they need to do to take care of that a very important left tackle spot, which we'll get into when we go over needs and such. Let's stay on offense overall with some of the free agents. So what are you thinking? Because someone might pop this video on early next week when the free agent period begins. What do you think we're going to see regarding, because there's a lot here at receiver and the skill positions in general. So who do you think are there any locks that you believe that the Chiefs really want to see come back?
Yeah, I don't necessarily know that there are, at least on offense. I don't know that there are. I think there are guys, maybe one. And I think that one is probably Hollywood Brown. I think they'd want him back, but it's got to be at the right price. I think they're going to have a ceiling.
Who's that?
Hollywood Brown, wide receiver.
Hollywood Brown. Okay.
Marquise Brown. Yeah. I think he's going to be the one that, out of this whole group of green that you're seeing on this page right now, I think he's going to be the one they prioritize. I just don't know if they're going to get a deal done. I don't know if there's going to be another team out there who offers him just a little bit more money, something that'll get him to kind of sway away from Kansas City. But I think towards the end of the year, when he came back from that sternoclavicular joint injury, I think you really started to see kind of the vision for what this offense was supposed to be this season. And they didn't get to really get there because Rashee Rice got hurt, Hollywood Brown got hurt. They had some of these injuries they had to traverse. That left tackle position was a nightmare. All of that kind of contributed to the offense kind of underachieving. But I think, if they had to run it back with one of these guys, I think Hollywood Brown's going to be the one. I do think, a close second, maybe Juju Smith-Schuster is a guy they bring in knowing that Rashee Rice might take a few weeks to acclimate at the start of the season in terms of his injury, that there might be a suspension. They might need to plug someone into that spot. Smith-Schuster's played that role before. Like, he's probably not like a 17 game stay healthy type of guy for Kansas City at this point of his career. And we've kind of seen that. But, can he fill in for a couple chunks when Rashee Rice is either acclimating or, out for, a couple games in terms of a potential suspension from his off-field stuff? Those are the two guys that I'd be really looking at here.
Okay.
Number 3, number 4 in my eyes, I think DJ Humphries is going to be like, maybe plan C or D at offensive tackle at the left side for Kansas City. I don't think he's going to be plan A or plan B even, but I do think that like bringing him back is a possibility, knowing that he has a higher ceiling with a full offseason learning the system under his belt than he did coming in when he did trying to learn on the fly, come back from a knee injury on the fly. And I think that there's, some sentiment in the Chiefs building that's like, okay, hey, maybe we could give this guy another opportunity to kind of impress us with a full offseason of work under his belt. The final guy I'll talk about here, Kareem Hunt. I know that, players in the building like him. I know the coaching staff really impressed with what he did last season. I think at the right price, they could definitely bring him back. I know they're going to be looking at some veteran free agent running back options, knowing that it's a really strong running back draft class.
Oh, yeah.
And, some of these guys might be willing to take a deal to come on, 1-year deal or whatever it may be to have a chance at winning a ring potentially with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs and Travis Kelce's potential last ride. So, those types of things could have some appeal to some veterans or some guys who are maybe not getting the market they want and want to hit the free agent market again in a year when maybe it's, less, more appealing, I should say, in terms of players versus the teams.
Okay. All right. So some quick questions in here. So Hopkins, a definite goner?
I think that, you didn't really see enough from him last year to bring him back where he's going to be a priority. I think, again, right price, any of these guys could probably come back.
Yes.
But for what he's probably going to command on the open market, given his pedigree and whatnot,
yep,
I don't think that it's going to be something that they too much explore. His snap counts towards the end of the season, they went in the wrong direction. It wasn't just because of, the Chiefs trying to save a 4th round draft pick versus a 5th round pick in terms of the trade terms that they had with the Tennessee Titans there. I think it was just one of those things where a guy like Hollywood Brown comes back and he's a better fit for what they're really trying to do.
Absolutely. Makes sense. Okay. So also, let's see. Tight end. We know Kelsey's days are numbered then. Do they feel confident now that, well, I don't know how confident, but that Noah Gray, Jared Wiley, those guys could end up being 1-2? Or do you feel that this is because of the depth of the draft class at this position, it's one of the deepest positions in the draft, even though you'll have Kelsey, Gray, and Wiley on another year, that they might just dig into that this season, where you think, oh, let's just wait another year because we have Wiley and Gray and Kelsey. We can wait another year.
Yeah, the tight end spot's kind of interesting. I don't really see them being too active there in free agency, and I don't really see them being too active there in the draft, even knowing that, Travis Kelce next year, he's, out of here. I think Wiley is going to be kind of the wild card a bit because he's coming off an ACL tear that happened during the season this year. So he's someone, that like, how far along is he in his recovery there? Do they have high hopes for his ability to be ready, week 1? I think that will weigh into, what they do a little bit, but also, they signed Noah Gray last year. I think it was 2 or 3 year deal, whatever it may be. So they know he's under contract and I think this year he's going to start to dig into Kelsey's targets and his production a little bit more than he did this last year. I think he may be more of the focal point while they kind of phase Kelsey out, knowing that this is like, the later years, right, of his career, that this is the twilight, and that,
Save him for
maybe
the playoffs anyway.
exactly. Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe they don't use him quite as much during the regular season, and then they switch gears during the playoffs and really let him go crazy because, he has had such playoff success during his career.
Okay.
There's also, a couple of young guys that they have that we don't have listed on the screen here. Baylor Cup signed it, I think a reserve futures deal, right? So that's a guy that they know they like. It's kind of like special teams blocking tight end type. And then they have Anthony Fursker, who they're familiar with, who started his career in Kansas City, spent this last season on the practice squad, was elevated a couple times. So right now they've got five guys, right? I could see them maybe adding one more in undrafted free agency, or maybe a late round draft pick that they like, or if someone falls into their lap and he is best player available, I know Veach will pull the trigger. I just don't know that it's going to be like a priority for them this year.
And what is their draft capital?
Right now they've got first round pick, two second rounders or 2 third rounders. They have 63 and 66. 66 is from Tennessee Titans in the L'Jarius Sneed trade. And they got 95, 132, and 256 or something like that. So they've got 6 picks right now. I think they could be served to, maybe, manufacture a trade, figure something out to get a couple more.
Okay.
Just based on what I think they need this year to kind of address their current needs and their future needs. But we'll kind of see how that plays out.
All right. So 6, but they do have 3 in the top 66.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. DJ Humphries, the league is so desperate to find offensive linemen that the chances are at least one team is going to give him a contract that will just make it impossible for the Chiefs to re-sign. But, we'll see about that. And then lastly, before we go to defense, Wentz. So
I think that
go ahead.
I think that, yeah, I was going to say, I think that the Chiefs have kind of resigned themselves to the fact that they're not going to be able to re-sign Carson Wentz, that there's enough quarterback needs with this draft class that's coming up not being the strongest, that someone's going to take a shot on him and give him a chance to compete for a starting job. And Andy Reid knows he deserves that. I think week 18 wasn't a really good demonstration of his skill set and what he really provided for the Chiefs this year and what he can be still in the NFL. And I think, you put him in the right offensive minded scheme with the right coach, you can still get enough out of him where maybe he's like, maybe he's not a top 15 quarterback, but maybe he turns into a top 20 quarterback.
Okay.
Which, that's something that should have appeal to other teams. And I think the Chiefs are comfortable letting him walk, knowing that, okay, if he's good enough for another team to go out there and compete and win the job, then suddenly you line yourself up for a 2026 compensatory pick as high as potentially even a third rounder, depending on what he gets paid and, how much playing time. If he ends up starting a full season, I mean, you're right there getting it. So
makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I agree. A lot of people talking about 3 or 4 quarterbacks, the same guys, and nobody's talking about Wentz. And I think that's a mistake. Okay. So on defense, and really a lot of it is up front on this defensive line. So with all of these guys currently free agents, which of these guys, same question from offense, which of these guys would the Chiefs really like and feel like they'll be able to re-sign?
Man, I know they'd like a lot of them back, but I just don't know how many they're realistically going to be able to bring back. There's already been reports that Tershawn Wharton is like being heavily targeted in free agency by teams with defensive tackle needs. I think he's probably gone. I think of all of their pending free agents, I think he has potential to net the most in terms of money. And I think, they're just not going to be able to be competitive there.
Okay.
I think if we're talking about, maybe one of the guys, 2 of the guys they'll bring back, potentially, I don't think there's going to be a strong market for either Mike Pennell or Derek Nottie. And I think, knowing that they only really have like Chris Jones and then some practice squad guys at defensive tackle, I think at least one of those guys will be back with the team And I don't think they'll cost a super lot. So I think that, Brett Veach will probably add them, second, third wave of free agency as a re-sign type of deal. I know, the coaching staff, loves Nick Bolton and Justin Reed. He got Jaden Hicks waiting in the wings at safety for Kansas City. I don't think they're going to be super inclined to re-sign Justin Reed, though. The other day a report came out that they weren't going to re-sign him, and he kind of responded to that on social media and was like, "That's news to me." So I think there's some hope there that maybe there's a possibility, but he's such a versatile and useful player, especially for a young team that's trying to help add some veteran presence in their secondary and on special teams even. I mean, look at his ability to work as a kicker and field goal block and all these different things, and then he's one of the best tackling safeties in the NFL. So I think teams are going to covet him. Today you're seeing Charles Omenihu talking on free agents on I think X about how he's going to hit the free agent market for the first time in his career. So I think you can kind of take that to the bank and assume that he knows what he's talking about there, and that the Chiefs aren't going to re-sign him. And Joshua Uche, he was a trade acquisition midseason. Sent a 6th round pick to the Patriots for him. Didn't really work out. Didn't play much. Didn't really fit the scheme. It didn't seem to work out in terms of what they expected him to be and what he was. I could see them re-signing Tuipulotu just based on the fact that he's probably not going to cost a whole lot, probably a minimum type deal, and could be some good depth for the team that already knows the system when, this clearly a spot that the Chiefs maybe they'll target in free agency, but I guarantee you they target during the draft is that defensive tackle position.
Okay. And then one more before we go into those top needs. You mentioned Bolton. They really like Bolton. And unlike the situation with Reed, where Hicks is waiting in the wings, no such luck behind Bolton. So what is the deal there? Is Bolton do you think Bolton is like the top guy on defense and Brown the top guy on offense?
I think if Bolton's looking for a deal that's like Zach Bond, he's gonna end up somewhere else.
Elsewhere. Yeah,
it's not gonna be in Kansas City. I think if he takes a deal like the one that like Drew Tranquill signed, a couple seasons ago with the Chiefs, he'll be back in Kansas City, guarantee you. But I think for Kansas City, they saw what life was like without Nick Bolton last season when he was injured, and they had Drew Tranquill playing that Mike spot. They know he can do it. So I don't know that it's necessarily a situation where they don't have someone waiting in the wings. I think that Drew can be that guy, but also Drew has an injury history himself. So I think, Jack Cochran's a guy they like, but he suffered a knee injury this year. So he would have been like key depth and someone who could wear the green dot, but now you don't have that. So really you only got the 3 guys, Cam Jones, Leo Chenal, Drew Tranquill with, big time playing experience. If you want to scroll down a little bit, I got a name for you that I really like. It's going to be the fellow they just recently re-signed, Blake Lynch. I love his story because, this is a guy that signed with the Chiefs. I think it was like, late December, and he was with the team for like 8 days. He's with the team for 8 days. And he was activated to the practice squad for week 18 because that injury I mentioned before, Jack Cochran tore his knee up, had to get placed on injured reserve. They just didn't have the numbers at linebacker to even like get enough guys out there. Like they were playing Joshua Uche out of position. And Blake Lynch was awesome in that game. He was there for 1 week, and he looked better than guys who'd been there for like multiple years. So personally, I think that that's a guy that, if you're looking at the linebacker group and Nick Bolton goes, and it's like, okay, Jack Cochran coming back from a knee injury, maybe he's a guy you sign, halfway through the season and put him on the practice squad and then elevate him, bring him back because you like him. But if there's a guy who's like your number 4 linebacker, and the Chiefs like to keep 5 to 6 guys at that position on their 53, I think that a guy like what's face, I just said his name, I can't even remember his name, but I think he could definitely be that number.
Lynch.
Lynch, there we go. Lynch.
Yeah.
My goodness. I think he's a guy. I think he's a guy that could be that number 4 guy for Kansas City, kind of behind.
But that means but that means they still would be looking for Drew's replacement, veteran. You think that would be where they would go with a veteran or the draft? Which way?
I think that this year, and Brett Veach mentioned it in Indianapolis. He said that it's a pretty good linebacker class. Okay. I think where they're picking in the draft, they'll have an opportunity to go out there and get one of the better linebackers in this class. Just depends.
Yeah, I think so.
Who they're looking at. I like the kid out of UCLA, Schlesinger,
oh yeah, he's a good one.
I mean, I think probably the top in the draft, maybe Demetrius Knight, outside of Jihad Campbell. Like those are the guys that I'd be looking at for Kansas City, just as a long-term deal. Because remember, Tranquil is going to be in the last year of his deal as well, as is Leo Chenal, and you can't keep everybody, right? So thinking beyond just this year, it would make sense to add maybe a linebacker on a multi-year deal in free agency, but also would probably make sense to draft one as well. So okay, I would put that lower on their needs list, but I think it's going to be up there in terms of their priorities for the offseason in some regard.
Well, before we go over those needs, just lastly with the free agents, do you think that there are any players who might over the next few days be a cap casualty?
I'd be surprised at this point for any cap casualties. I think that the Tooney trade was the most cap casualty type thing you're going to see from Kansas City. Brett Veach has already said he's not going to touch Travis Kelce's contract this year, which is kind of surprising to me because he's got a pretty big cap hit. I think the best thing they can do for their salary cap situation at this point is one, go to the Patrick Mahomes piggy bank and, convert do some simple conversions there and free,
Would you like some guaranteed money, Patrick?
Yes. Yeah.
Of course.
Free up anywhere from 15 to 20 million in space. And then if you can get a long-term deal done with Trey Smith before the buzzer on Monday, when legal tampering truly starts, you'll be setting yourself up to at least have a really competitive shot at free agency.
Okay.
If they don't do that, they're going to be very quiet. And I don't know that they can really truly afford to be quiet in free agency, knowing that they have just so many needs.
Yeah, that's the thing. They're and with little draft capital, something, it'll be interesting to find out what the plan is here. Okay, so let's get into those needs. Do they have, and you've already mentioned some of them, of course, but do they have an absolute easy number one need?
Left tackle. Left tackle 1, left tackle 2. Give me 2 of them, man. Give me 1 in free agency, 1 in the NFL draft. And I'm actually convinced that that is the plan, that they will, no matter what, make some sort of left tackle signing in free agency, no matter what, take some sort of potential offensive tackle, whether it is, trading up to find a guy that you really, really like, or it is like, hey, this is my favorite developmental tackle prospect, a guy that has high level traits. And I'll be honest, this is a class where I actually like the developmental guys, I think, better than the guys at the top of the class.
I feel the same way about the quarterbacks. Yeah. So yes, I agree. I think where the Chiefs are right now, you mentioned linebacker, I think they're in a really good position because there are so many other positions and players who are going to get drafted earlier, that linebacker spot you're talking about, or even the offensive tackle spot. There are going to be some talented players there sitting at the bottom of the end of the first round where the Chiefs don't even have to move up if they don't want to, and they probably sit there and get a guy that they like.
Maybe. I'm always skeptical at this time of the year. All these mock drafts come out and you have a left tackle, an athletic guy like a Josh Connerly or an Ursary or some of these guys that are at the bottom of the round, right? Consistently in these mock drafts. And then all of a sudden you get to late April and day one's here and those guys are gone by pick 20, just because the league has a different valuation of these guys than some of these mock draft nicks.
Well, it's also the offensive line now. It's such an important position that when the buck stops and you have to make the call, it's I know we probably shouldn't at this spot, but we got to get him. We just have to. It's just like the quarterback spot. It's so important nowadays.
you look at the Chiefs' struggles. Really, recently, the Super Bowl, not having a true solution at the left tackle position cost them that Super Bowl.
Yep.
That there's no other way to shake it. Like that is what happened in that game. They didn't have a plan in place should Joe Tooney and Mike Caliendo not work at left guard, left tackle for them in that game. They didn't have a plan B, or at least one that they were comfortable with going to, because they had opportunities to and they didn't. So they have to find right now their plan A and figure out what works. There's a lot of smoke right now that should Ronnie Stanley, Ravens left tackle, make it to free agency, that the Chiefs are going to be highly interested in making a very competitive offer. And usually smoke this time of year, you see it and you're like, I don't know about that. That could be a smoke screen. Throw somebody off the trail of the real guy. I think this smoke, where there's smoke, there is fire in this situation. I think that they're going to target a guy like Stanley for multiple reasons. Top one being, I mentioned there's not a whole lot of their pending free agents for Kansas City that they're really looking to re-sign, but there are a lot of them that are going to get deals and potentially good deals elsewhere. And they're going to have a lot of potential in terms of, maintaining some draft capital next year by way of compensatory picks. And who doesn't count towards the compensatory pick formula? Ronnie Stanley, because they made an alteration to his contract that now disqualifies him for that.
Wow.
In Baltimore. So that's a guy that you can go out and hand him a $20 million contract, and he is not going to erase your top compensatory free agent on the board once they get signed away from your team in 2026. So that's a guy that I think that the smoke is absolutely 100% legitimate. They're going after him. It's just a matter of whether or not he's going to make it there. And any minute now he could re-sign with the Ravens, and then the Chiefs have to shift to whatever plan B is. So
next up, do you look at defensive tackle, linebacker, or running back?
I will add real quick before we go to those. I do think, like I said, the Chiefs will also address this position in the draft. There's some good guys. The Jalen Travis kid out of Iowa State, Holland Pierce out of Rutgers, just like big traitsy, offensive tackle prospects who either haven't been doing it in a long time or just, have some questions at the pro level that I think that the Chiefs are really going to be digging into on day 3. And I could see, if you go out and sign a Ronnie Stanley, I could see them waiting until that kind of day 3 type thing to go and grab one of those traitsy offensive tackle prospects.
Well, I'm telling you right now, as a Rutgers guy, Pierce is going to be a stud in the NFL because you just talked awesome about playing time. It was amazing how they found him. It was like Greg Schiano found him basically he never had any experience at all. And he's like, well, look at this guy. We got to make him a tackle. And there you go.
He already has the story of like a Hall of Famer in the NFL. like he's like one of those all-time greats, type of stories. And then, I think he wears a neck roll. Anytime an offensive lineman wears a neck roll, they're high on my list.
Right. No, I'm telling you, I'm so surprised that he just doesn't get talked enough about, but I can't see him slipping out of the second round. I just can't. These GMs are too smart that they're going to let an offensive guy like that in a tackle with those traits, who I've watched a lot of Rutgers games, and I'm telling you, I don't recall many times where he was beat. So that is a very good player that is only going to get better with proper NFL. And by the way, he had NFL coaching, and that's what makes him interesting, because he had a guy who has a Super Bowl ring who was on Schiano's staff. So he's going to be a good one. Okay. So need number 2.
I'm going to go with running back. Actually, I think running back's up there with the biggest needs for Kansas City right now. Obviously, you got a guy like Carson Steele, who's kind of that like hybrid fullback running back type, who's going to be in the mix for a couple carries here and now. And I think the Chiefs still really like him. You got Isaiah Pacheco, who's on the last year of his deal. They're not going to extend him before next season because, really towards the end of the year, he wasn't the same guy coming back from that injury. He wasn't the same player that he had been. Didn't quite have the explosion, the get off, the the pop that he did and that he's known for, and that
and it shouldn't be a surprise. Everybody knew this. About we talked about it. About he's such a physical guy
yeah,
that he can't last in the NFL like this. And then there he goes. He gets hurt, and
yeah.
he's going to have a much better season next season to rebound. But you're right. I mean, this is such a. There are three positions that are really deep, really deep. One is running back, another is tight end, and the other is defensive tackle. And the Chiefs need two of those.
And let's say that he comes back and has a tremendous 2025 NFL season, right? Are the Chiefs going to be the one to pay him? I don't think they are. Even if he does bounce back and prove that he is, better from his injury and that he's a great player and so on and so forth. Because, again, like I said, tremendous draft class, big draft class in 2022. You got a lot of guys. You just got a lot of guys to get through.
That's
George
it.
Karlaftis, Trent McDuffie, Jalen Watson, Brian Cook, Leo Chenal, Isaiah Pacheco. That's too many guys to pay. It's plain and simple. You're not going to be able to pay all those guys. And running back has proven to be a replaceable position in the NFL. Teams move on from these guys. I hate it.
Especially the Chiefs.
Yeah, I love Isaiah Pacheco. I wish that there was a pathway, in my opinion, for him, and maybe there is, but I don't know that there's a pathway for him remaining Chief long term unless he were to take severely under market to stay in Kansas City, and I just don't know that will necessarily be the case.
Okay.
And knowing that Pacheco could be gone in a year, you've got just a ton of holes there.
Yep.
You need at least a guy who can be a 1A, 1B to Pacheco this year, if not two guys. And thankfully, this is a really, really, really deep running back class, probably one of the deepest we've ever seen. I mean, there are guys like Tajay Brooks, who's put up an athletic profile that compares to like Frank Gore, and he's probably going to go in like the 5th round.
I know, it's crazy.
It's nuts. It's nuts. So there are guys that you can find in every round of this draft class who will contribute and be good players in the NFL. And I could see the Chiefs taking 2 of them in this draft, to be honest, even with only having 6 picks. If they don't find a guy they like in free agency to kind of pair with Pacheco, and maybe it's re-signing Hunt, like I mentioned earlier, but maybe it's, going out and finding a guy to take less than market for a couple of years or a year. But whatever it may be, like they need to find some solutions at the running back position.
Well, considering the experience of this regime of getting these guys late at this position, and also even Carson Steele, the fact that it's such a deep running back class means there are going to be some quality running back free agents that are going to be available. So even if they don't use that second pick, you can get a guy in free agency that just didn't make the cut because it's such a deep class. So I think I could see even that happening, and not just being a guy, but being a guy that could easily make the team because of the class being so deep. Okay.
And look, I'll throw a name out there, right? Like there's some undervalued guys in this class, I think, in this free agent class, like a Rico Dowdle, who just had 1,000 yards with the Dallas Cowboys, and doesn't seem to be a situation where he's going to be re-signing there. That's a guy that you could maybe steal and pair with a draft pick, and suddenly you have a really, really nice looking backfield between him, Pacheco, and a draft pick.
All right. Now, the third need, would that be defensive tackle or linebacker?
I would say defensive tackle. I would rank it. I would probably rank it even, honestly, with running back, just because they just don't have a lot of bodies there. I know they're really high on Fabian Lovett. They have Siaki Ika, who they signed to the practice squad late in the year. That was a former high, I think, day 3 draft pick or day 2 draft pick. So, they have 2 guys who could potentially be depth. I think Lovett will play some snaps this year. I think he's like maybe in line to be like your number 4 defensive tackle for Kansas City. He's a guy who flashed a lot last year. Really liked what I saw from him at training camp. I think he just needed a year in the NFL under his belt to kind of get up to speed. And I think this year he's going to start contributing. And I think, he could be a guy that by year 3 is kind of like a household rotational name in the same way that Tershawn Wharton kind of rose up the ranks.
Makes sense.
This is a deep interior defensive line class. They met with a lot of these guys, a couple of these guys at the combine in terms of formal meetings. They're probably going to bring some in on on top 30 visits as well.
Any particular style in the defensive tackle that they're looking for? So when you're trying to guess which DT might fit best for the Chiefs defense, do they have a particular style they're looking for?
I think they're going to prioritize someone who can win the one-on-ones, knowing that Chris Jones draws so much attention.
Okay. So someone
someone
physical, big and
someone
physical, more than likely.
big, physical power rusher type, with some burst to his game. There's a couple guys, Joshua Farmer, defensive tackle out of Florida State that they met with. A guy like Derek Harmon, who's very similar to Chris Jones, to be honest, out of Oregon. Honestly, give me any of the guys from Oregon, Birch, Caldwell, give me those guys. They're great. Kid out of Ohio State that they like, Ty Hamilton. There's some late round guys that you should know. This kid Thor Griffith out of Louisville, who wasn't a combine invite. I have no idea why. He's a beast. I think he used to play for Harvard as well. That's a guy that I could see them targeting on day 3.
Okay.
There's a lot of potential for this interior defensive line class. And again, that's a position where I wouldn't be surprised to see them take 2. If they had to take 2 of 2 different positions, right? Running back and defensive tackle are probably the 2 that I could see them doubling up on some guys there.
All right. And then linebacker would be next?
I would say that linebacker is next, knowing those future needs that we discussed earlier. And then
what kind of a linebacker? Any specific type?
I think someone who can play the mic is probably ideal. If they can play Mike and then either weak side or strong side linebacker in addition, that would be the bonus, right? And what you like to see. But I think, as things stand right now, right, it's, Tranquil the Mike, Leo the strong side, and probably Cam Jones slipping into that weak side with, a guy like Lynch potentially, or Sean Bradley potentially, being that number 4, those backup types.
Okay. And then the final need for the team in a top 5 situation is?
Can I give you like a 1A and a 1B? Because I feel like
sure.
2, and they're kind of related, right?
The more the better. The more you can inform me, the better for my write-up in the draft guide. Yes. What can you give me?
I mentioned the 2022 NFL draft class, right? And they have 2 first-round picks from that draft class. I have a hard time finding a situation where they're able to keep both of those players beyond the 5th-year option. So I think that they will, on May 1st, enact the 5th-year option for George Karlaftis and for Trent McDuffie. But I do think they're going to have to choose between those players beyond that. I only think one of them is going to get a long-term extension based on what happened this offseason with the edge rusher market, with Max Crosby, and now you got Trey Hendrickson's probably going to set a new record when he gets traded and goes to a new team. You got Micah Parsons coming up. I think it's going to be really hard to pay a guy like George Karlaftis, as much as I hate to say it because I love him. I think he's a great fit for what the Chiefs do. I think that, defensive end is probably the next best bet in terms of needs. I'd rank it just a little bit higher than cornerback, knowing that the Chiefs are likely to extend Trent McDuffie, at the very least get the 5th-year option out of him. But, it's like they're starting cornerbacks right now, Trent McDuffie, Jalen Watson. They're both free agents in 2026, right? So Joshua Williams, also a free agent. Najee Johnson's a free agent right now, but he would have been a free agent if he didn't have end up on the practice squad, right? Brian Cook, also a free agent. So you got a lot of turnover potentially happening in the secondary in the next 2 years. But, I think finding, based on what happened last season, you're probably losing Tershawn Wharton right now, right? Finding another pass rush presence for this team, I think it makes it that much better for the next year, whether it's an interior guy or an edge guy. I'd like to see Felix take another step, and I think he will. But is he ever going to be more than a rotational type of guy in Kansas City at this point? I don't know. I'm not sure where I'm willing to be on that. And then you got a guy like BJ Thompson, which, I reach out to his agent to try and get an update because the Chiefs haven't given one in a long time outside of, Andy Reid's generic. Oh, he's doing well. Like, we haven't seen this guy since he had a heart attack or since whatever happened, his heart stopped. I don't know what his future holds. Is he going to play in 2025, or is he slated for medical retirement? What's going to happen with BJ Thompson in the future? I know they're really high on him coming into this year as a potential speed rush type option for this defense. Has he been able to work in this time period? Like, has he been in the weight room, working towards coming back? I just don't know. We don't know these things. So that could be something that maybe changes their plans at defensive end. If he's a guy who could come back and maybe contribute in some capacity. Mike Dana has proven to be a very good option as, a starting right end for them. I had a really good year in 2022, not so much, or in 2023, I should say, and not so much in 2024 because of some injuries and stuff like that. But if you can find another guy, right, who maybe is similar to Omenihu, who can play edge and then reduce down in some of the different types of formations that Steve Spagnuolo likes to throw out there, these NASCAR packages and so on and so forth. If you can get him to do that and find that type of player, I think it's going to make that defensive line that much better for Kansas City.
Yeah, it's interesting that all you got to do is you got 2 4-3 teams in the Super Bowl, but one of them is like coming after you in waves. But the Chiefs just don't, even though they have their own unique and good defensive scheme, they've got a great coach and it works. It's been unusual or during the Super Bowl run. I mean, yes, they've had some better edge rush depth before, definitely better than last year, no question about it. But normally when you run a 4-3 defense, if you're successful, you go like 3 deep at edge. And the Chiefs did, I mean, they were basically 1.5 deep last year. I mean, I'm talking about sack guys, really putting pressure on a quarterback. So that just can't last.
Yeah, I mean, really, it was Jones, Karlaftis, Warden. That was really it. Those are the guys who were making the difference there. And you can't
just have 2 of them are inside. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yep.
You can't just have those guys. You got to have more. So if you find that, you find an interior guy who can replace Wharton, you find a guy who can also be out there for some pass rushing downs, shift Jones out to end like you have been, throw another guy long, long, heavy defensive end in the middle, put some pressure on those interior offensive linemen. I think that this unit, it will affect not only the defensive line, but it'll make the secondary that much better.
Okay, so before I let you go, Charles, were there any coaching changes, any significant coaching changes, anybody that had to be replaced?
Nothing too crazy. The Chiefs lost their safeties coach to the Baltimore Ravens. I think there might be an internal promotion there. They haven't announced it yet, though. I know they added a defensive quality control coach, Chris Orr, who was over at was it Jackson State, I believe. And he's a guy who had a coaching internship with the team last summer. He was at Chiefs training camp. Guy they really like. Has a lot of potential future position coach in the NFL, probably linebacker coach type deal. And then I believe they added Matt House, former linebacker coach, who was a defensive coordinator for a while at LSU and has coached at Kentucky before. He's in a senior advisory role on the defense. He's a guy I've heard. I mean, I remember one of my favorite stories that I ever got from a player at the scouting combine. I talked to, I don't know, was it Mike Edwards? I don't know. I talked to one of the safeties, former safeties at Kentucky who played for him when he was the defensive coordinator there. He told me that he got up in front of the class one time and to illustrate a point, he put a 2x4, on some cinder blocks in front of him and did a karate chop and chopped right through it and just blew the entire defensive room's minds because they didn't know that he was about that life. But Yeah, just interesting
Yeah,
guy,
right.
motivational type to have. A good,
Yeah,
a good set of eyes to have, in addition to everyone else on the staff. And I know the Chiefs had a lot of success with their linebacker unit when he was the linebackers coach in Kansas City. So they'll be happy to kind of have him back in there. And if there is some restructuring of sorts, in kind of the secondary area, I think it'd probably be like Alex Whittingham, maybe getting promoted from a quality control coach to a safeties coach or something like that. Just some movement there in terms of roles and responsibilities. It was kind of interesting. Andy Reid was kind of asked at the combine, I think, about it was something like, are you interested in adding any, different voices and people to the offensive coaching staff to kind of get some fresh ideas and stuff like that in there. And he kind of totally avoided the question, or just said, it's nice to have, different voices and this and that and the other thing, but he didn't really say whether or not he was going to add anybody there. But I know that Chiefs fans are kind of eager for that. They want that. They want some fresh voices in the offense, knowing that it's kind of underperformed and it's kind of trended in the wrong direction in the last 3 years. And they want to see it get back to what it once was in maybe 2018, when Patrick Mahomes lit the league on fire and was out there setting records.
sure. I mean, it's so interesting. It depends on what fan base you're on. You can get spoiled really fast
You can.
when when you have such fantastic coaching and players. And this is definitely one of those situations. And Patrick still has a long way to go. It sure sounds like Andy is not talking about retiring or anything like that. So we'll see. We'll see how everything goes for the Chiefs as they try to rebound. Of course, we're going to have a lot more discussions between now and the beginning of the season right here on the Arledge Football Network. Unless something like really big happens, we'll at least get an opportunity to talk after the draft, and then we'll take a look at all the moves. In between that time, again, we got links in the description so they can follow your work, Charles. And is there anything specific right now out of the, anything that like a piece that you're working on? Obviously, I know everybody's following the combine and the specific.
Yeah, I would say nothing in particular specifically that I'm working on right now that I have coming down the pipe to look out for. But obviously, daily Kansas City Chiefs coverage over at A2ZSports.com. And you can follow me over at GoldMCT NFL on X. That's where I usually am sharing all of my content. And just excited for this next generation of Chiefs football. We'll see what it brings.
Yeah, very, very tough offseason ahead, it looks like, for the Chiefs. So they're going to have to earn their money with limited draft capital and cash. So we'll see exactly how that works out. And again, Charles, I really appreciate your time. Thanks for making it a lot easier for me to put my Kansas City Chiefs draft report out, or it's basically a team report that we have in the draft guide, where we take a look at each team and what their needs are and all that other stuff. So while you've got the draft guide and you've got the prospects, you also can check out the team reports. And that's why these interviews are really important to us. And Charles, I appreciate it. Look forward to talking to you after the draft.
My pleasure. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. And we'll see everybody again here real soon on the Our Lads Football Network.